This is Singapore's longest curved HDB corridor. Stretching up to 320 metres on each level, it takes nearly 4 minutes to get from one end to the other. But experts say you'll probably never see a building like 34 Whampoa West again. Our corridors are getting tighter, void decks are evolving, and it seems to have an effect on how we feel.
One thing I realised that I'm missing was really social interaction.
You know, talk, I go in, lock the door, I eat something, I sleep.
She is quite lonely.
So that begs the big question. Could where we live actually be making us feel more alone? We're exploring 3 neighbourhoods and chatting with residents plus an architect to find out more. But first, how do we get here? Public housing evolved a little something like this. From kampungs to shop houses, SIT flats, early HDBs, and finally the BTOs we now see. But hold up, why is one more rectangular and the other one more cauliflower shaped? In the early days, HDBs were mostly linear, rectangular slab blocks, long corridors connecting many units. As Singaporeans grew richer, we moved towards more complex cauliflower-like point blocks in the 1980s, which could house bigger 4- and 5-room units. Made up of fewer units per floor, point blocks offer more privacy to residents. Okay, back to 34 Whampoa West. Built in 1971, this slab block stretches longer than 6 Olympic swimming pools. These long corridors are meant to foster a sense of community.
But is that still true today? I want to find out, do long corridors affect how we connect?
Each other know already. In here, anybody, you go to the lift, you go to the ground, you go to the food court, anywhere, we can talk. We can say hi, bye, like that, how are you, like that. Come here, living here, they are all my family like that. Each other. I talk to my sister, my daughter like that. No, nothing wrong, ma. Here, this long corridor, everybody walking around. The neighbours come here, sit together. There is no feeling lonely. Youngster like the point block. The old people don't like come out or nobody.
I do think it makes a difference whether or not there are people like walking past your doors and like smiling at you or like chatting with you. And he said like they'll always help each other out, like the aunties downstairs. He said even just like chatting with me, like he really appreciates it because if not, he would just be at home in his house, lock the door, just making his own food. So if our long corridors can affect how we feel and connect, what about our void decks?
Void decks were first created in the 70s to serve as a shelter for children on rainy days, but they evolved into community spaces for residents, and now it's one of the ways some make connection.
Amma! My grandpa passed on maybe 15 years ago. She doesn't really have peers or people her age that she can really hang out with. Every morning she will go down to the throne, and I call it the throne. Sometimes when people walk past, she will just say hi, and greet people. I think it's part of her routine because she spends a lot of time at home just sitting on her sofa. So I think this is her way of getting active and going out and seeing the environment.
Seems like void decks are important points of contact with the outside world, especially for seniors. But today, void decks like these are evolving. New void decks are smaller, chopped up by walls, or replaced entirely. Some are being swapped out for features like sky gardens, like at Pinnacle at Duxton. We spoke to one of the architects behind the iconic HDB to find out why.
At the Pinnacle at Duxton, I think this idea of greening came about also because of the heat that the rooftop absorbs. So with trees, naturally you cool the rooftop, and the trees, just looking at trees, people are just feeling a lot more calm and peaceful. So that's how we saw the sky garden as more contemplative. And then on the ground is really very vibrant with urban farms, basketball, and there was a gradient that allowed people to choose.
Though people miss the old void decks that we grew up with, we now have a variety of spaces to choose from. But how do we bring life to these spaces?
One way that we can battle loneliness and foster community spirits is to create third spaces that are formed by the residents, formed by the community. In Queenstown, they are pioneering a cafe called the Ibasho Cafe. So the Ibasho Cafe is run by seniors and they self-direct. I think it's very important that these community spaces help us out when we need the help, like when we need the connection and we couldn't find it anywhere else. Maybe we could find it here in this kind of space. Studies have shown that if, it's not really about having deep, happy relationships, but it's also about having transient encounters with happy people. So let's say throughout the day, you go to a shop, uncle says, "Hey, hi, Lang Loi, where are you going?" At the end of the day, you feel happy. But if you meet grumpy people, right, even though you have a very happy wife or family, right, you have met 10 unhappy people. So creating environment that help each other to thrive is very important.
That's what third spaces offer. Low-pressure ways to connect. Sociologists say that these are places that allow for spontaneous, productivity-free conversations. But here's the thing, even the best design spaces won't work if we're all too busy to stop and say hi.
As we spoke with residents, many said it's not just their spaces that are changing the way they interact, but their pace of life.
可是各有各人的工作，各有各的忙。好，
你打电话叫你朋友来，他们说我今天没有空，这个礼拜没有空，几时有空？
Young people rushing, go to the work, busy, in the world who free, everybody busy.
Okay, it's low-key quite funny because I just saw like a young girl asked if I could like chat with her. And she said she was meeting her friends, so she has to go. I am the exact same. Like if I was this girl, I'll be like, bye. Like I'm always like rushing to places. And yeah, I think just being here has made me realize that sometimes you should just let the interruptions interrupt you.
We can have the best design spaces, but if we're always in a rush, we might never pause long enough to say hi to the people around us.
They also brought up the term we probably all heard before, kampung spirit.
I guess the sense of community, it's what people call like the kampung spirit. I would say it's not easily found in newer blocks, like newer neighbourhoods, because of how guarded everyone is.
我很少会说跑去隔壁敲门啊，哎，来，以前不同嘞，港崩。
对，我们以前是这样子。
要有。
以前门都开着的。
有养猪，有敲工人脚牙工，这个还小了，不懂。
现在孩子做工回来就是在家，然后那时没有电视的时候，就是吃饱就是在空地那边坐下来，一起去采水果吃，然后聊天这样啊。
Compared to adults, right, I think the kids have already created their community here. Like they have started to like look up and shouted for people like, "Hey, come down and play," that kind of thing. I think that is something that maybe adults can learn from. How the kids just like, when they see each other, they just like run to each other, handshake, whatever. But their parents just don't talk to each other. One day, hopefully, we can cross over that barrier and get to know each other, right? Then that's when we can start to look out for each other,
Maybe we need to learn from both the young and old. Maybe the kampung spirit isn't fully gone. Perhaps it just looks different today.
I really believe that architecture can shape how we feel and behave. We adapt to our environment. So if the environment is a happy environment, it promotes happiness, then it will help us to be happy. So it's like a two-way street,
So we set out to 3 different parts of Singapore trying to find out whether where we live could make us feel more alone. And 3 things I've learned. 1, there are so many factors beyond design that could affect how we feel, and this includes our culture, mobility, or even how long we've lived in a place. And second is the power of architecture. So one of the experts told me that architecture has the power to destroy community, but it cannot build community. That's on us. And the third thing is the importance of transient encounters, and that little gestures that we make to each other could go a long way in making this urban city feel a little less lonely at times. I feel like this experiment was a good reminder for me to slow down, to acknowledge the faces around me and just smile at them, to just chat with them. Maybe then home will feel a little more like home. And whether or not we have long corridors or short, void decks or rooftop gardens, it shouldn't change much the community we choose to build. Because community isn't built by design alone, it's built by us.